The end, I did start to get passionate. I told some stories from my own past and how I got involved in it and what this movement and socialism has really meant in my life, how grateful I am for the older communists who mentored me. I've made a lot of sacrifices to be where I am, but I've also gotten a lot of help and mentorship over the years, and I want to acknowledge that.
Really one of the most interesting nights of my life, which is when I was invited to speak at the hall where Malcolm X was assassinated in Harlem. There was a political prisoner's benefit. And it was a political prisoner's benefit. There were supporters of people from the Move 9 who were still locked up at that point. There were supporters of Mumia Abu Jamal and Jamil Al-Amin. And I walked into this auditorium, and they had like a light where at the spot where Malcolm X had died, and I was on a panel, and I was like the one white guy there. People were joking about the flyer, and they're like, one of these speakers is a little bit different than all the other ones. But, I was the only white guy there, and I looked out on that audience. I spoke for like 3 minutes. It was a very short presentation. But when I looked out on that crowd of several hundred people in there, I thought, I am speaking to a group of veterans. I looked out on that crowd because these were black liberation fighters. These were Black Panthers. These were, Black Liberation Army former members. These were black nationalists and others, and in walkers. And when people were speaking, they were shaking and having flashbacks, and there were a lot of tears in their eyes. And I thought, this is like a veterans gathering. This is like speaking at the VFW, right? And I mean, there's rooms like this in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. There's rooms like this in South Africa. There's rooms like this in people's Korea, and this is a group of people who have made great sacrifices, and they're there to support their comrades who are still locked up, and they're in this for real, and they've seen it. And I looked out on that crowd, and I thought, again, these are people who understand how serious it is, and this is how important all of this can be.
Communism will save America. China has created a system that's raising up its poorest people, its peasants, raised out of poverty. They're creating a system that gets to the base of the economy and recreates it so that the working class can rise. Unlike in this country, where homeless people sleep a block from the White House.
At the summit, we protested against the Museum of the Victims of Communism, which is nothing but spreading pro-imperialist lies, demonizing the history of the Soviet Union and China.
So trying to fight something that literally causes circumstantial change. Well, instead of fighting against people around the world, we should be fighting against those bankers who set up that situation. We should be building a coalition of people with different perspectives. We're going to stand up against big banks and corporations. That's what I think.
You're looking at Country Joe and the Fish. Little known fact, there was a band that played at Woodstock called Country Joe and the Fish Band. And the reason they have that name, according to every source that I can check, is because their parents were members of the Communist Party USA, and they picked the name for some pretty interesting reasons. Now, this guy was Country Joe because he was from Georgia, from the countryside. He grew up in a small village. He was the son of a bootmaker. And this guy was the Fish because one of his most well-known quotations, before he even started his organization, he just walked 300 miles through the countryside, talking to every person he could meet, asking them about the conditions of their life, engaging with them. He says, how should we judge whether or not a youth is a revolutionary? How can we tell? Well, there can only be one criteria, namely, whether or not he's willing to integrate himself with the broad masses of the workers and the peasants, and he does so in practice. The masses are the water, and the revolutionaries are the fish. Country Joe and the Fish.
The next stop is Vietnam.
We are educating, we're agitating, we're demonstrating, and we're normal people. That's the best part. Pretty normal.
Let's fix our government right here at home to provide for working people before we go 7,000 miles away to waste young, precious lives over something as dumb as anti-communism.
Afterwards, a few of us went to New York City to protest against Tsai Ing-wen, the Taiwan president.
All the polls show the American people don't want a new war. The American people are sick and tired of our money being wasted on bombs and weapons and destruction, provoking a war with China, provoking a war with Russia, while our dreams are derailing, people in the United States are suffering.
Tsai Ing-wen came to the United States to beg for more weapons and to demonize China. And the Center for Political Innovation, we were in the streets of New York City confronting the Taiwan president and her effort to spread war.
China is not our enemy. China is not our enemy. China is not our enemy. Get out of our country. Stop trying to sell war in our country. Stop trying to sell war in our country. We don't want a new war with China. We love America and we don't want a new war with China. China is not our enemy. Stop trying to sell war. Get out of our country. Stop trying to sell war.
You know, what we did with Sa Ing-wen, that went viral in Chinese media. Over 1 million shares. I was interviewed about it by Global Times. The Global Times, one of the main publications in China, made a point of highlighting the Center for Political Innovation, finding out about our work and why we do what we do. That was really, really great.
I'm a patriotic American. I love my country and I don't want World War III.
After all is said and done, Summit for Hypocrisy was a great success, and we can see that success. Look at all of the leftoids tailing us. They were calling us fringe, they were calling us cringe, and then a week later they all shut up, and then they started copying our organizing tactics. And I'm glad that they do. We know what the problem is, we are offering solutions.
In my eyes, CPI represents faith in humanity and the belief that there's an optimistic future to fight for, that your neighbor and the people around you aren't just stupid and in your way, but actually the hope for the future is in building relationships